Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dana Buckler Show. My name is Dana, and I'm pleased to welcome back David Klein. David, my friend, how are you today?
Back again.
Back again. We're doing this again. This is now, if you've been listening to the show for, past few months, you know that David and I are on this journey of having, in-depth discussions about different films that are very beloved to each of us, and we each take a turn picking a film. Now, last film we did was Swingers, which was on my docket. Next up on the docket was a pick that David requested. And I found it really fascinating because it's a film that is, I believe by my math, 54 years old. It's iconic, it's legendary, and it's also a movie that I've never seen. Today we're going to talk about Peter Bogdanovich's The Last Picture Show. And I'm going to start this conversation by asking David, why did you choose this film? And then we'll get into my reaction of seeing the film for the first time.
This is just another one of the movies like the ones I've recommended before that I like, The Killing, for example, that I just want to share with people because it isn't one that everyone has seen, despite the fact that it was so celebrated at the time. That was 1971. I think it's a masterpiece in every way in terms of acting, dialogue, direction, the locations, just the significance that it had then and still has. It takes place in 1950s small town Texas, but the characters are very modern, to my mind, as people. Their motives remain are recognizable in were in 1971 as they are now. And it was just so much different in spirit from so many of the movies. I didn't see it at the time. But so many, it was like during the blockbuster era but it was so much different from the movies that were being made in the 80s. And the ones I was renting at Blockbuster. I just found it mesmerizing because there's so many memorable sequences and performances. It just had this exquisiteness throughout, deals with nostalgia without being nostalgic. So I'd say that, like my other choices, it's also an ensemble piece par excellence. The dialogue does not have a false note in it. The incidental music plays a huge role in it. High and Lonesome Hank Williams songs. So there's just so much to enjoy. And it's one of these things that first watch it for the plot, and then you can really enjoy the performances even more because they're so good. So much is happening that you need to see it at least once.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that my first viewing was about a week and a half ago, and I'm making sure that I'm in the optimal settings, David, okay? My phone is off, no distractions. It's not when I got home from work later in the evening where I was going to be tired. This was got up in the morning, had a couple cups of coffee, was ready to go, sat down and watched the film. Now, it's important to also note that I knew nothing about this film. I knew a few of the people that were in the movie. I knew that there were some Academy Award winning performances, but I couldn't piece together who had won because it's one of those films that had just fell through the cracks. So I did not read the plot synopsis before I hit play on the film. I did no research on it. I wanted to go in as cold as possible. And I'll just pull the Band-Aid off right now and say that I think this lives up to the hype. 54 years later, it lives up to the hype. And I'm struck by a couple of things, and I put a couple notes on here, that the movie came out in 1971, takes place in 1951. So there's 20 years, removed from when the actual story is being told. Bogdanovich's choice to make the film in black and white worked on two different levels for me. One, it helped to establish the time period, but it also gave me a false sense of what type of film this was going to be. Yeah. Okay, so I'm used to seeing lots of movies from the 50s. So when some very graphic situations happen in this film, I was not prepared for it. Even though I know this is 71, this is the same year that The French Connection came out. We're making movies like this. This is happening. Stories are getting to be told the way the directors and filmmakers want to tell them. But that black and white and the period of it just I won't say it tricked me, but it just lulled me into this false sense of, well, this is going to be a great, nice coming of age story. I get, and then, whoa, like immediately I'm just like, I remember I actually called Jess and said, Jess, have you seen this? Of course, she hadn't seen the film yet. I said, you need to watch this. This is so my initial reaction was, I thought it was an excellent film. I really bought into the story. I mean, it took 20 minutes to set up the characters, but once I established who the characters were, I really bought into it, and I was really on this journey with them. And especially, obviously, Sonny's going to be the protagonist of the movie, but I was just blown away by the whole thing. And I can tell you, very rarely does a movie make me well up. And it happened a couple of times, which we'll talk about later on. Yep. I literally found myself having to take a moment because I became so invested in the story. So, David, first I'll say thank you for this incredible recommendation. I don't know when I would have ever gotten around to watching this film, but I'm glad I did. And so my initial reaction was I loved it.
That's great. That's great to hear. It's the welling up. It's like, to me, like sometimes I get choked up, I got a lump in my throat, and sometimes it flows better. It just like, and these are good tears, and I definitely shed them I just watched it last night again, and there are 4 or 5 scenes that just will always do it. Like almost like me, like passages in a J.D. Salinger short story. When I come to them, I'm like, I already have anticipatory welling up feelings.
Yeah.
Because I know they move me, they always have. And those sort of situations will always move me. And there's these beautiful human situations, ugly sometimes, but also just very vulnerable, like almost like very few movies I can think of that evoke these feelings in me.
It's also interesting because it's a film that I'm eagerly anticipating watching again. The first viewing, I'll admit things were a little confusing in the beginning, trying to, I'm going into this movie with the understanding that it's regarded as one of the great films of all time. Okay. So
or at least of the 70s.
At least of the 70s, one of the great films of the 70s. I'll concede that. Absolutely. Right. And I'm going into this film understanding that there are some high expectations. So the way I'm viewing this film is by not wanting to miss anything. And by not wanting to miss anything that's happening, I'm missing things. I'm missing, I'm so focused on, I'm seeing Timothy Bottoms, but what's happening in the background? Who are these people? And
That's right. You can't even notice things like, God damn, the set design. Yeah. There are so many little details. Every room looks so right. The curtains look right. The saddle shoes, everything looks just so well thought out, and also not the cliche 50s tropes. I'll point out that there's a scene where JC, the character played by Sybil Shepherd, is taking her makeup off when she's talking to her mother. And this really disrupted a trope of the 50s where everyone always sort of looked just right, no matter what, even if they had woken up. And I would like to say that what I'm saying now has been informed by my listening to a podcast called You Must Remember This, hosted by Karina Longworth, who did an entire deep dive into Polly Platt, who was married to Peter Bogdanovich, very much centered on her amazing contributions to this movie. But that talked about things like that they wanted to get right. They wanted to avoid these typical 50s tropes. So even though it may have looked like a 50s movie, even the look of the mise-en-scène, if I can use a pretentious word, didn't feel cliche.
Yeah, and it shows. It shows. I don't know if we should get into spoilers because we want people to watch this movie, but it's been seen enough. Most people know this. So I guess what we'll say is mild spoilers for the film. We'll try to not touch on too many key things that happen towards the end, but we will have to talk about some spoilers as far as relationships breaking apart, other relationships coming together. We're going to have to talk about this. But as far as a synopsis goes for the film, what do you got?
Anarene is a small, windblown, dying town in Texas in the early 50s. It looks pretty dead, but still waters run deep. We first meet Sonny, a recent high school grad, one of the three main protagonists. He's played by Timothy Bottoms. Before he even speaks, we see that life is kind of pushing him around a bit. He's shivering in his car. His hair's blown all over the place. He's experiencing car trouble. Then he shows up at the pool hall where the owner, known as Sam the Lion, needles him about a recent football loss, as does this other guy, this more menacing character who walks in and says, "Ever hear of tackling?" So he's having his manhood impugned before the plot even begins. He's on the defensive. We also see him playing with a younger boy in the pool hall, Billy, who's played by Timothy Bottoms, his real-life brother, Sam Bottom, who also went on to a career in acting. Sonny takes off the boy's hat, puts it on backward, obviously a sort of ritual act of affection between them. And then we switch to the picture show of the title, and we meet Dwayne, the other main male protagonist, played by Jeff Bridges. This is Sonny's best friend. He has a great 50s ducktail. He's big and strong. He's the high school football captain, and he's going out with the prettiest, richest girl in town, JC, played by Sybil Shepherd. She's also the town's most ruthless person. And in the course of the film, she's going to bring misery and joy to their lives. That's the essential.
That's perfect. Perfect. No, that's perfect. So, talking about the town a little bit, and I just want to mention one of the things that I kind of identified with this film, and I've mentioned this before, having lived in a very rural, small town in Tennessee. Now, not Texas, but very, very rural. And I was feeling sort of this sense of I've been in a town somewhat like this, not to the level that Arneen is in, but I've been to it where nobody really leaves the town, and nobody actually really, only few aspire to get out of here. And it is just about the local movie theater. It is just about the high school football is everything. And I just felt whispers of this, and it felt so authentic in this film because I feel like I had been there before. And it also reminded me of a time that I drove across the state of Texas on Interstate 10. And throughout that journey, which takes 2 days, in case anybody's wondering how long it takes to drive across Texas, there were so many of these towns that are abandoned, and you can see them from the interstate. And I just kind of want to talk about the world of this town for a moment. And you mentioned it a little bit with the set design and everything already, but have you ever experienced a town like this? Have you ever been to, a town that's on the precipice of not existing anymore?
I think not. I think I've driven through them, but I've been cosseted enough in suburban New Jersey and apartments in New York, and no, this world is not familiar to me.
It's really interesting because, like I saw in this film, it's a world within a world. The people that live in this type of town, this is their world. Everything, they're never getting out of this town. And if in the case of this movie, some of them are going to go work the oil fields, but other than that, they're just this whole town has a beginning, a middle, and end for everybody. And that's one of the things that the film just captured for me so much. And it was, again, talking about the symbolism of the film and the small town and the gossip, the judgment, everything. I think I'm still decompressing the film because I think it affected me on a level that I wasn't prepared for. Having understood, on a small sense, this world they were living in.
When were you actually there long enough to want to get out of this town?
Oh, I got out of the town. Yeah, no, I was living there. I lived there for 4 years. I was there through high school. This felt authentic. This felt really, and this would have been in the early 90s. This is in the 50s. There's a 40-year gap, but it still felt the same.
Well, I'll tell you, it felt authentic to me for a couple of reasons, and one of them might be familiar to you from the book I wrote, because my first real profound relationship was with a woman who was 11 years older than I was. I definitely felt, because that's what happens. Our character, Sonny, ends up having an affair with the 40-year-old, deeply unhappy wife of the football coach. So, and then he has his first sort of real intimacy with her. So that was incredibly resonant. So you don't have to have. It just shows you how timeless the movie is, that it hit you because you actually related to the situation, but to the geography, to the locale. But to me, the human situation was resonant as well.
This is so I wanted to let everybody.
So many of the other situations.
Sure. And I want to let everybody know before we start recording, I said to David, I'm going to kind of turn to you for a couple things, because I want to discuss sort of my impressions of certain things that happen in the film and just sort of get your take on them. And when we're talking about Sonny and the football coach, is it my impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, and it's okay for me to be wrong because I've only seen this twice, but was my impression the football coach wanted Sonny to take Ruth to an appointment or something to that effect? He wanted to, because he just didn't want to be around his wife. Is that kind of how I interpreted that?
Yeah, well, actually, in the book,
okay,
he's flat out known for groping the boys.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Yeah. He's closeted gay in the book. And so I read that, and then there was a few lines in there where sort of like Kubrick did in The Killing, where I detected this the hidden element where with one of the characters, it's very between the lines. I don't think he had to be that between the lines, but it worked really well. So the coach says at one point when he first enlists Sonny, he says, you know how women are, there's always something wrong with them. Which is sort of interesting. And he does give a little towel flick to the backside of one of the players who looks back at him, I thought bemusedly. But so yeah, and there's a couple other things that he said. And of course at the end he said, so yeah, I think that he's at the end, the brief moment where after Sonny has been involved in this relationship, and of course the whole town knows it, he says to another person with Sonny within earshot, he goes, man should never cheat unless for a good cause.
Oh.
So it was about football, but he was directing it towards Sonny, sort of absolving him. So yeah, he had no interest in, that's why she wasn't just unhappy. He was not interested in her sexually. So
brilliant. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And you're right, that part at the end where at the football game and the coach, yes, okay, that all wraps it up. So this is why I want to have this discussion.
That's why we're talking.
This is great. So talking a little bit more about Sonny, who is our protagonist here, Timothy Bottoms, who, by the way, not to get into anything political, does he ever look like a young George W. Bush? I just want to say.
I haven't looked at him lately, but I'll tell you the funny thing about Timothy Bottoms is I related to this movie so much when I first saw it, not only because I had, for a million reasons, but also because I actually felt like if any act, it was the first time I had ever seen a movie where I thought I looked like the guy on screen. So I feel like I looked. So let me show you. Can you see this? This is me in what I think was
holy shit.
Timothy Bottoms era.
I'm sorry. I should never have brought up the George W. Bush thing. No, you definitely look like him. Holy shit.
Yeah, I had the sort of unruly hair and something about the way his face was shaped and even his body and the way he moved. I literally I felt like I was watching someone like me on stage, on screen. So that was, I know I've never seen it. People, when I was younger, people used to say, oh, you look a little bit like so-and-so, but this was the first time I felt it myself. So
you saw it.
That was, yeah, and I don't think I was lying. So, yeah. And then, I don't know, I don't look like George Bush now. No. So, it was, faces change.
Yeah, okay, listen, so I was just telling Justin, said, doesn't he look like a young George W. Bush? But I'm taking that all back.
You look like a young David Klein.
Yeah, I'm going to read, yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. You'll have to send me that picture so I can show it to Jess.
I will.
And just be like, hey, take a look at this. Sonny's journey. Let's just talk about it for a moment here, okay? So when he first goes to the picture show, he's there. He meets up with Dwayne, okay, and I just love how he gets there. The two girls move over. Everyone gets a piece of gum. Little thing because there's no popcorn. The lady can't. There's no popcorn in the popcorn maker. I love all that. Then they go back, and then it's a little. They park, as the kids used to call it. And this is the first time when you realize the movie actually, in my opinion, means business, and it's gonna be more than just a coming of age story.
because it's the teenage fumblings. I guess this is what Bob Seger was singing about in Night Moves, but it's very awkward. It's this ritualistic thing where Charlene Duggs, which I think is a hilarious name, his bummer girlfriend, perfunctorily removes her bra and her breasts just sort of flop out. There's nothing sexual about it. And then he, just perfunctorily puts his hand on it, and they're just doing what they always do. There's no joy in it. And then the minute he tries to go a little further, because, hey, it's their 6-month anniversary, she's shocked and offended. And then she tells you a lot about how the girls in that town think about things, which is that you're going to get plenty of that when we're married. And that's always going to be a great way for a marriage to begin. And it's just, and so yeah, he breaks up with her, but it's incredible. It's played for awkwardness, and it was really a different approach there was no thrill for even a 17-year-old boy watching that scene. It really was all about the situation, which was not a good situation. It just happened to involve sort of nudity that was expected.
It was also, I'll deem this, the scene was uncomfortable. I was like, yeah, because you nailed it perfect. It was cold. And it had to have been in 71, a real eye-opening scene. I mean, we're going to get to another.
That's just the beginning.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's another part in this movie that gets the film banned in a lot of super conservative towns, across the country. We should bring in, so he's broken up with somebody's broken up with his girlfriend. Okay. But this has all happened in the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie. We're also getting the introduction of Dwayne Jackson, Jeff Bridges. I mean, God, I couldn't believe it. And he still looks great now, but I mean,
beautiful. He's about almost as pretty as she is.
Yeah. Good looking guy, really good looking guy. And then
he's confident and cool and relaxed, and the opposite of Sonny, who's got all these very mundane problems. It's like, here's this guy who is floating on air. He's got the beautiful blonde girl on his arm, and he's confident.
And that blonde girlfriend is JC, played by introducing Sybil Shepherd, is the way the credits go about this. And to me, David, this is the most, I'm going to say, complicated / frustrating character in the movie for me. And I'm talking about the character. I'm not talking about the performance. I'm talking about, I knew people like this. I wasn't really interacting with people like this, but I knew people like this. And so just to set things up, she's the rich girl in town. She, her father is a very high up in the oil, I don't know exactly what his job is, but he's very high up in whatever oil company he works for. Ellen Burstyn plays her mom, and Ellen Burstyn looks amazing in this film. Absolutely amazing. 2 years later, she's going to do The Exorcist, but this might be my favorite Ellen Burstyn role now.
She just destroys her scenes. I mean, if that makes any, I don't know. Her scenes are so powerful. Her looks, her expressions, the way the camera focuses on her, you just don't want to look away. In this one shot where she just flips the bird to her sometime lover with such beautiful contempt. I just could watch it over and over again. You
see the scene where Sonny, Dwayne, and JC are in the car at the drive-in. There's exactly that part right there. And her mom pulls in, and it's Ellen Burstyn. She's got the scarf over her head with the sunglasses. You can tell that she's a bitterly unhappy wife at this point. Like, she's been given it all, and might be one of the most unhappy characters in the film. And you realize later on why. I love, by the way, we're not going to go through the whole film point by point, but I love how it comes full circle, and you find out why she is the way she is. And that was, again, a moment that I welled up.
Without feeling pat in any way.
Yeah.
These stories they're good stories, and so they have a good resolution. And he deploys the resolutions at the right time, makes the most of all of them. He makes the most of every scene. Little things. There's a scene between JC and her mom, where at first we see JC lounging on her bed, in PJs with a kitty cat, stroking the cat. And then they have this scene where it's confrontational, and the scene ends with her flopping on the bed and pushing the cat off, like, get the hell off my bed. I don't love you anymore. And that's JC right there. She has no moral compass. She has no real affection. It's all situational. So
And
yeah, she's a hollow person.
and the reason why she's having such confrontation with her mom and also established her father is because of the relationship she's in with Dwayne, who is not well off. He doesn't come from a wealthy family. And I love the conversation that they're having where she says, like Ellen Burstyn basically says, you have to find somebody rich, that you can't. And JC says right back, well, Daddy wasn't rich when you met him, but you understand that there's this whole, once you're wealthy, you have to stay wealthy and you can't drop it off. And that
And she says, yeah, but you're not something like you're not as cunning as I am, or words to that effect. It's like, yeah, you're not gonna. I made that work with your daddy, but you're not. You need to just choose someone smart. I played my cards, but you're not smart enough and cunning like I am. So you need to just choose a rich guy.
He does. Yeah, you're right. She kind of says something like, I made your father get rich. Like I love that. I love that. We understand when we get to the Christmas dance scene when Dwayne and JC are in the truck and he gives her Christmas present and there's a line that I missed the first time, but I caught it the second time where he says, it took me 6 months to save up for this. And, it's a watch. And she's like, I love it. It's beautiful. And then she just point blank tells him, by the way, I'm going to leave here in a little bit. And I found it fascinating, David, that she doesn't even try to hide where she's going just to set things up. She's been invited by Lester, a very young Randy Quaid, to go to essentially what's a skinny dipping pool party. And
yeah, she blames it on her mom.
Yes. Her mom's.
So I don't want her mom says I have to go because of the country club connection or whatever.
Yeah. It's just, I found myself arguing with my television. But that just goes to show just the emotions that this film was pulling out of me. And that doesn't happen that often with modern films. Modern films, I'm just kind of sitting there watching, taking them in, but I'm literally audibly saying, no, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Dwayne seems like a great guy. So we've also gotten to the point I've kind of sort of glossed over that Sonny has accepted the coach's offer to assist Ruth. She invites him in for a Dr. Pepper. And I love that little touch, and they have a conversation. Tell me about how this relationship blossoms. I mean, we know a little bit about it, but
it blossoms from total awkwardness.
Yeah.
It just, there is a moment where he first comes to see her. She invites him in, and they're sitting down. She offers him she says, oh, she doesn't even have the confidence to say, stick around, why don't you go? She invites him in. Then she says, you can go if you want. And he goes, no, I'll have a Dr. Pepper. So they're sitting there across from each other and it's quiet and awkward. And she starts to cry. And we all know it's hard, whether we're men or women, but probably more so with men, when a woman just starts to cry and you don't know what to do. And it's so quiet. And he's just taken a sip of that Dr. Pepper. And I noticed this. You can hear him swallow it, but quietly, like to keep from making too much noise, because there's so much intimacy in this moment it was like his reaction was to swallow quietly. And somehow that came across the screen because there was nothing else going on in that scene except for two people in a room. And that's what I was thinking about. This movie is so amazing. It's like the same way somebody like Bob Dylan or anybody else who's really good can get up there with a guitar or an instrument and fill the room up, and you don't feel like you need anything more. There's enough drama in just that with that simple setup. And somehow the simple setup of one room, a glass of soda between them, and it gets you feel like you're there. It almost feels like a documentary.
And what do we think about Cloris Leachman's performance in this film? We should note that she did win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for this film. One of 8 Academy Award nominations this film received. We'll go over all of them a little later on, but my experiences with Cloris Leachman have always been when she was a little bit older. I just didn't really get into her filmography. I thought she was lovely. I did some research. She was about 44 years old at the time of this film. And she was just brilliant. I'd love to hear your take on her performance in the film.
I agree with you. Incredibly poignant performance. And she actually, you see this character sort of looking dead and defeated. You see her blossom. You see the light return to her eyes. And then you see it go out. I mean, it was really something. You know, even in the beginning, even the costumes help. She's completely buttoned up. Her clothes, she just looks like she's completely enclosed wrapped up, and so to see this character, she made you see this character's blossoming as a human being, brief as it may have been. And then the final scene, I'm not going to get deep into it, but there's a lot been written about this final scene between her and Sonny, which is sort of a reconciliation of a non-traditional sort. But apparently it was one take, and it's absolutely riveting human drama of the highest level. I dare you to watch this scene, and just not be moved by it. It's so intimate. It's not all in words. So much of it is in the expressions, the physical, one physical movement, one hand reaching out for another hand, and it absolutely just it's deadly.
I did read the one take, and I watched. There's a lot of archival interview footage with Bogdanovich, and I watched an interview that was 3 or 4 years after the film came out, and he talked about how Cloris Leachman had asked him if she could rehearse the scene a few times with him, and he said, "No, I want to see it the first time you do it." And Bogdanovich is, he's an exceptionally good director, and he's incredibly detailed. So
great call on his part.
Yeah.
Because he knew something. And also that she could do it, that she could deliver on it because she was a pro. Not everyone else was so, you know what I mean? He knew she could do that one take heavy scene. Apparently, I read some sort of thing about there was a screw up in the famous scene at the water tank with Sam, with that famous speech, which basically got him the Oscar.
Yeah.
There's where the camera moves quickly to the foreground because somebody, possibly one of the bottoms forgot their line. So these things happen.
All right, I'm writing that note down. Pay attention to that.
But anyway, Cloris, he must have known that she could and would have been more powerful. Just doing it that first time raw.
The part that got me about her performance, putting aside the end scene that she does, was the emotions I felt of watching her, like you said, blossom. I wrote down she comes to life for the first time. She experiences to her, it's the first real love, joy, that she's probably had her life, because clearly she's been in a loveless marriage for many years. And that feeling you get when you connect with somebody where you can be completely vulnerable. She's probably never been vulnerable once a day in her life with her husband, and she can all of a sudden be vulnerable. And it's the dichotomy of it is it's with somebody, a 17, 18-year-old kid who at the time is still in high school. And it was one of my favorite kind of, I don't like to use the word plots, but sort of threads of this movie, because this film is kind of Altman-esque in its ensemble, like you said, but I just felt that joy for her and that devastation.
Their first kiss, which just seems to happen it's so hard to set these things up naturally, but they do. They're just at the dance and they're outside putting away the garbage, and just their physical proximity tells them that it's happening. And it's so natural the way it happens, so unforced. And it's wonderful to see the joy on her face, genuine joy. He's just more sort of surprised almost than anything. It made you really, you cared for that character a lot.
Yeah.
And her sadness was really poignant.
And one of the reasons why I cared about her was so many of our characters in this movie do things that you're just like, God, why are you? Whereas even though she's committing adultery, which is, again, is a sin, at least you have to, this is a very conservative town, but I'm saying there are so many characters in the movie that just do awful things. And and she doesn't do awful things. And
Right.
yeah,
Sonny included.
so yeah, well, absolutely, Sonny included. Absolutely. I want to mention before we get to the pool party scene, it's important to note that this town, I mean, there's not much for the kids to do in this town. There's a diner, there's a pool hall, there's the picture show, there's the movie theater, the Royale.
No joyriding.
You can go joyriding, yeah, which, by the way, still I did in high school, so things hadn't changed in 40 years. There's the occasional dance, but there's not a lot to do. But what I find interesting is that you've got one character in the film who owns, the three items, the three places, and that's Ben Johnson, who plays, like you mentioned it earlier, he plays Sam the Lion. Also won an Academy Award for this performance. And I will tell you, just to show you my age range, the first time he comes on screen and I hear him speak, I said, "Oh, he's in Red Dawn." He was in the 1984 movie Red Dawn. There's halfway through the movie where Swayze and Sheen go to visit Mr. Mason, and that was Ben Johnson. And he's
Must have been very grizzled at that point.
Well, yeah. So we're talking that would have been 13 years later. 13 years later. But he's got a small role in the movie, but it's a very pivotal role in the film where he kind of dumps a lot of exposition as to why the events have happened in the film. But I'm curious because that's how I identified him originally. I was like, oh, he's in Red Dawn, because that was my first introduction to him. Now, having gotten that out of the way, Sam the Lion is just, he's incredible. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this character.
So Sam the Lion is this hardworking, stoic American archetype of a man, of a good man. He's not cruel like the other men in this town who are depicted pretty badly. He's gruff, but he has a heart. So in one pivotal scene, he shames these boys who've done an awful thing just with his strength of character and a few words. So he's a man. He stands up to the bullies. He has strength of character. He's the closest thing to a John Ford Western hero in this movie. Obviously, Bogdanovich alludes to these Western heroes, and I guess that's another thing that's dying out. But he's not an archetype. He's a vulnerable person. He's vulnerable to illness. He's also his heart aches for love lost. So even that image that he talks about swimming across the tank, even that is he's nostalgic for that, but that's an ancient moment. He's on the way out. A good man whose type is on the way out.
And we'll touch on that scene where he sort of admonishes the boys for what they did. It's an important scene. But let's get to the pool party. Let's get to the scene that got this movie banned in several very, what I'll call ultra-conservative portions of the United States, and mostly in Texas, mostly in small town Texas. This movie was just outright not allowed to be shown because the locals felt that this was an improper depiction of what teenagers, even the wealthy ones in Texas, would do. But it's also, again, a very salacious, eye-opening scene that I had gotten over or past the scene where Sonny has his moment in the truck earlier in the film and had kind of settled back into, okay, we're back into this movie, and this whole scene goes. And I kept saying to myself, how far are they going to take this? And it was, I'll say, Sybil Shepherd on the diving board, that scene was uncomfortably long to watch. It was uncomfortable because not only is everyone in the pool watching her, I'm watching going, this is taking too long. And it's a deliberate choice by Bogdanovich to have her take an excruciating long time to take her clothes off.
It's also putting us in the position of all the people sitting down there watching too.
Yeah.
It's putting us in that position. We feel for her. It's taken from her point of view. We feel her awkwardness, but we're also kind of watching this movie. So it's kind of like we're in this we're in a kind of in that same, yeah, it's an awkward bind. It's awkward for her, and we feel awkward watching it. It doesn't seem right because I think suddenly we feel for her in all her bitchiness. Suddenly she is up there all alone. And that's high school. I feel there's so much metaphorically about high school. They're feeling comfortable in your own skin. I mean, literally in this case, all these sort of trying to fit in. So here, peer pressure. Here is this situation where supposedly you're supposed to be naked because all of us cool kids are naked, so you should be too. And she follows it. She's like, okay, I'm game. But that's high school. You don't know, you feel like I guess maybe, there's a scene in Heathers where Veronica asks one of the Heathers, well, if everyone was jumping off the George Washington Bridge, would you do the same thing? And she goes, I don't know, probably. And it's the same idea. It's the same idea that people do these ridiculous things out of whatever, the cinnamon challenge. I don't know. It goes on and on. So there, she wants in. JC's bored. So, and she wants to ascend into the cool society. And so she does it. But we're sitting there going, God, what would I do if I were there?
And they make her say, if it's your first time, you have to get up on the diving board and strip in front of all of us. Oh, and hey, don't worry. We all did it before. I just kind of like, well,
that proves it. That's probably proves why if you don't do it, you're a chicken.
Exactly. I'm racking my brain because it's been more than 30 years ago. What if there was any high school experiences? I'm sure I had plenty of not like that, but where there was that peer pressure to do something that you probably in hindsight knew wasn't probably the smartest idea. After we get to that scene, I'm going to dance around this a little bit, but it is the scene where they do take Billy. I'm not going to get into it, but other than to say that they take
to lose his virginity.
Absolutely. And again, in another incredibly awkward way.
In a car.
Yeah. And it doesn't go well. And he ends up with a bloody nose. And that's, again, the great line when Sam really lays into the boys about what's happened. And he says, you didn't even have the decency to clean his face, to clean up the blood.
Those words they just sting, and the way he delivers it. You feel, you almost feel shamed for having watched it.
And, he tells them, none of you are welcome in any of my establishments anymore, which, again, in a town where there's nothing to do, that would have been akin to a prison sentence to them. So I was thinking that
one of the things you wrote, like there's a lot of beginnings and endings in this movie. There's like the relationships begin, relationships end. Sam, relationship to the people, even with places, you're not allowed in the pool hall anymore. There's a lot of things are really constantly. The ground is constantly shifting under these characters' feet, and they can't quite keep up.
I'm not at a loss. I'm never at a loss for words, but I'm also I was under the impression that I had a good handle on coming of age movies. And saying a good handle of when they really started becoming relevant. And I'm coming to the realization that I missed a glaring one. I missed one of probably the first authentic coming of age story. And by authentic, I mean in a world where you can do a film R-rated and you can tell the story you want it the way you want it to be told without having to skirt around the Hays Code.
Yeah, that's true. And we've seen. Dazed and Confused was a high school movie that was not cliche. It didn't have a lot of sex. It was more about drugs. But maybe that was good, right for the era. But you talk about the limited things that these kids have, the movies, this football, whatever, and sex. Sex is also a diversion in this town. JC seems just bored with things when she initiates this thing with her mother's lover who treats her horribly. And that's probably the most awkward of all sex scenes. And there's a bunch of them.
There is. JC she's decided she's going to leave. I mean, if I say this correct, like she has starting to take her mother's advice, trying to find somebody that's, obviously a little more wealthy. She makes she kind of has a moment with Bobby, and Bobby,
Probably the rich kid who has the pool party.
and I'm not going to say the line, but he asks her. No, I'll say, fuck it. Who cares? He just says, "Are you a virgin?" She says, "Yes." "All right. Well, call me when you're not, or let me know when you're not." And I'm just like, some of these people are just. I was so infuriated.
Yeah, but this McMurtry's book was
Yeah.
autobiographical, and people have been misbehaving and screwing around. You don't expect it to see it in a movie of that era because you felt like it was such a buttoned up era. But behind the truck doors, it was happening, and they dared to go there. And yeah, but most high school movies are a little stylized, when 1971 by, end of the 70s, you had things like Porky's, right? And whatever. And you had just sort of flat out comedies, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High came later. And Dazed and Confused was a serious comedy, I guess. But this was just had a tone that I don't know. I don't think you've ever quite matched the tone here in a movie that was basically about high school characters.
One of the notes that I wrote down, I'm just looking at my notes here when I watched the film after the first time I watched it. I wrote down, it was all a myth. And what I meant when I said it was all a myth is how teenage, not just teenage, but all life, the way it was portrayed in the movies, in television, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and the early part of the 60s, would lead you to believe that if I was to hop into a time machine now in the 1950s and go back to the 1950s, that it would be this incredibly sanitized, nobody uses bad language, nobody, that type of thing. And that's all a myth. And it was kind of perpetrated upon us for many, many years because you were not allowed to tell these stories, but books could.
Right.
And I find that fascinating. And you've read the book?
I have not read the book.
Okay.
A little bit of research.
Makes me want to read the book.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does. There's the scene where JC decides that she needs to lose her virginity so that she can accept Bobby's proposal. And of course, she's going to lose her virginity with Dwayne. Of course,
So she's a total mercenary.
Yeah.
He makes this pass at her and says, "Yeah, come back when you're not a virgin." She's like, "Okay, let's see if you can do it this time." Because the first time he not quite able to make it happen. So yeah, then it was first it was a performance outright, and then it was so she could run away from him and be with Bobby. Yeah. So she has no scruples whatsoever. Honestly, she was a very troubling character, but she wasn't quite a villain. I don't know, maybe you thought she was.
I don't want to say that she was a villain, but is she a product? Is she a product of how she was raised by her parents? I was thinking that throughout the movie until you hear Ellen Burstyn's monologue about what it was like when she was truly in love at one point in her life. And so I'm really grappling with that question. Is she a villain, or is she a product of the environment she grew up in? It's a big question mark for me.
I think part of it is when you grow up with a lot with privilege, and you're physically attractive, you've kind of leaped several key hurdles that most of the populace is going to be struggling with. So I think it lets you be less concerned with if you hurt people, unless you're at least a certain kind of person. It can make you more callous and take these things for granted and not really relate to other people's struggles. And certainly she doesn't relate to other people's struggles. She's very egotistical, but it's easier to be that way if you've got certain attributes and a certain bank account. But also it doesn't mean that you can't be a good person. So no, I think it's both. It's nature and nurture. But I think it turns this the blonde virginal high school dream queen on its head, that cliche, which in a really interesting way. She's actually desperate. You see her behind the scenes. She's kind of desperate, social climber, but she puts on an act that's so good. you see both sides of her. So that was really audacious. You could see just how someone could use these feminine wiles to their advantage while still being a miserable, mixed up person.
That's well said. I will say that's well said. There's a part that I wanted to talk about, and that is after Sam has told the boys they can't come back. Sonny gets caught in the diner having a cheeseburger with the waitress, and he.
Genevieve, another great performance by the great Eileen Brennan.
Exactly.
There are so many of these, but keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Sam ends up finding, Sonny in the diner, and that's, great moment. But I want to get to the part where, it was one of the moments where I really had a good laugh, and that is when Dwayne and Sonny decide to just on a whim go to Mexico. And you don't realize the poignancy of the scene the first time you see it, where Sam asks them, where are you guys going? They said, we're going to go to Mexico. And he says, you're going to go in this thing, this piece of shit truck. How much money you got? Here, take a little bit more. Money seems to just melt away when you're in Mexico. And, they drive off, and then cut to they're coming back. And they're both wearing sombreros, or they've got sombreros in the truck, and you can tell they're just painfully hungover. And there's that just 2 minutes of levity where you can only imagine the debauchery they got themselves into. And I thought that was fantastic, only to come back and find out that, major spoiler for the movie, if you don't want to hear it, skip ahead 30 seconds, while they were gone, that Sam died of a stroke while they were gone. And that got me.
No, they look completely miserable, and it was that kind of perfect. I don't know if it's quite a smash cut, but it was kind of like say goodbye, and boom, you see them on the way back. It was really, that's the fun of cinema.
The fact that you don't know anything they did, but the fact that they're coming back with sombreros tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, they look sweaty. They look really like they've been through the ringer. Absolutely.
I have had some pretty rough hangovers in my life, but I could not imagine driving back from Mexico in a pickup truck, which obviously didn't have air conditioning back in that day. That would have been brutal.
And the whole point was to get drunk.
Yeah.
So, they weren't holding back. So there was brilliant filmmaking.
Plenty of money, and American money would have gone pretty long way in Mexico. So come back to find the news that Sam had died of a stroke, and that he leaves Sonny the pool hall in his will.
So there, once again, you've got an ending and you got a new beginning.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's got this responsibility. And I think the significance of that, of him having the pool hall, is what sort of ultimately these characters want to get out. But that's what keeps him there. That connection, that responsibility keeps him there. Keeps him from he tries to escape at one point, literally tries to drive away.
Oh, that's right.
Just can't do it. Turns the car back around. And that was exactly this new, the death of Sam is the birth of Sonny, the pool hall owner, and it just cements his life there, means even less that he's going to stay there. And in fact, I looked it up in the sequel, Texasville, he does stick around. He ends up being the mayor of the town and a supermarket owner, but also a troubled person. Because one thing about Sonny is that his father is only shown briefly, and he's a pillhead.
Yeah.
He barely says a word. He's like catatonic, and we never hear his mother. So she's either gone or dead. And so the implication is that, okay, that's why he's so naive and trusting, and he has no compass, really. He has no guidance. His father's not there, his mother's not there. All he has is Sam. Then Sam goes, and Sam's, limited. That's all he's got. And he's got the teenage mores and social order, that those laws that he's trying to figure out, which we all try to figure out, and we all try to make sense of, even though they keep shifting and they're confusing as hell.
Yeah. That's brilliant what you just said there, because it is, when Sam dies, he leaves the pool hall to Sonny, and it just repeats itself over and over again. And it's no one ever leaves the town. I wrote down Texasville. I wrote it down. let me just let's put a pin on that, because I do want to ask you, have you seen the film?
I haven't. I just looked it up today because I wanted to see if my prediction that Sonny's not going anywhere, if that was borne out. And it was. JC leaves. She becomes an actress. She sees the world. She comes back after a tragedy. So it's all the characters come back. And the interesting thing is it's more about Dwayne.
Okay.
Dwayne is a big oil company owner. So he comes back home and becomes the big shot. And then JC returns and
well, I need to see the movie.
So it's very much Sonny's sort of the third character.
Okay. I need to see the film. I really do.
Yeah, I'm curious too now.
My curiosity is piqued. Obviously, from what I've read, it wasn't as well received, and just kind of a blip on the map. So JC's going to learn that Bobby has married someone else, and she's and this is the part, like Dwayne's upset that she's broken up. He enlists in the army. She ends up getting with Sonny. Sonny is leaving Ruth. This third act of this film is where I think I got the most sort of frustration, not because of the movie, but because of decisions that everyone's making and how it's gonna impact them. And
that puts it all into motion. When JC finds out that about the affair, basically, she's like jealous. She says, I thought he always had a crush on me. And then once she goes after him, that unravels everything. She destroys the closeness between him and Ruth and sets up the conflagration with Dwayne and Sonny. And just, as Genevieve, the waitress, says, she causes misery. She's just going to cause misery. So yeah, that's what that. And also, where did she find out about all this? Through her mother.
Yep.
Town gossip. Because everyone knows that, you didn't know Sonny was having an affair with Ruth Popper? So it's all the cycle continues. But it really picks up steam in the third act.
And then JC has the sex with her father's employee, Abilene Kluglager. Would you like to know where I knew him from? Which movie I knew him from?
Yes, which?
1985's A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. He played Jesse's father in that movie, and that was my first introduction to that actor.
Yeah, well, I really don't. He apparently did like tons. Always played sort of a tough guy. I knew he was a venerable guy, and Bogdanovich cast him because his performances in those kinds of movies.
The first time we're introduced to him at the Christmas dance, I thought this guy is cool as ice. I just thought that's a real Texas man right there. That guy just came out and I was just like, that guy is a badass. And now he turns out to be just a horrible human being, like a lot of people in the movie.
The moments of cruelty are often just with words. But yeah, when he after he has his assassination with JC and drops her off just with chilling coldness, you really feel for her, even though she initiated this ridiculous event.
He tells her, you better get out of the car. And that brilliant shot of her getting out, and you see she wants to turn to lean down, and he just takes off. I said, that's absolutely brilliant. So then she ends up, hanging out with Sonny again. Dwayne's on leave. Dwayne finds out this. Dwayne's taking a job in the oil fields, and he finds out about this. They get into a big fight. Sonny gets the beer bottle smashed in his face, loses an eye. Not loses an eye, but
I also had a big eye injury too. So there's just yet another reason for me to relate to Sonny.
That's right. I'm telling you, this is brilliant.
So he's injured, and then JC makes a play for him. He says, "Let's get married."
They drive to Oklahoma to get married. I love that scene. They get pulled over. Cops, nope, not happening. Ellen Burstyn's character ends up giving Sonny a ride home. And that's when she basically tells him, it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Lois
Farrow. And she tells him, it all just comes full circle. Sam has already died. We know that he is loved and lost. And then you find out that it's that it's Lois that he loved. And it just, again,
Was the one who they raced their horses across the tank.
yeah,
She bet him that she'd beat him, and she did. And you imagine the younger, vivacious Ellen Burstyn and in her younger self, Sam, and his younger self.
yeah,
You can almost feel it. And it is this little moment where, because she's given him the flask and he's drinking it, there's a little moment
just a
where
touch, yep, just
the
a
touch
touch.
where it was like, should we go fuck? Kind of. I mean, there was just that. And then she looks at him, she goes, I think I'm going to go to bed now or something. But you didn't have to spell it out, but it was so palpable.
I caught that the first time I saw it too. I said, wait a second. I knew the movie was almost over. I said, no, we're not going to open up a whole nother storyline here. This can't happen this way.
But it was real.
Yeah.
It was real.
Yeah.
That moment when you've been drinking and you're just like the person you're with, like, oh, I haven't thought about it till now, but I don't know. Should we, just because I'm a man and you're a woman? I mean, it was almost like that. So yeah, there was a lot of moments that were unspoken, and you totally got it.
Something happens after this that I don't want to spoil it. That forces Sonny to drive to the city limits, like we talked about, and he's going to leave. It's a tragedy happens. He sees it basically unfold in front of him. Something really sad happens. I got very emotional during that scene as well. And he drives, and he turns around. Then he goes to see Ruth, and then we have that great moment, which again we talked about earlier, and I just kind of sat there. Movie's over, and I just kind of sat there, absorbing it the first time, ready to watch it a second time to really kind of, I understand who the characters are now. I know who everybody is. Let me pick up on this. And I think it'll take 3 or 4 viewings for me to really, truly appreciate it. But I don't throw around the word masterpiece very often. I don't. I've seen a ton of movies in my life, and my show is focused around it. And I don't want to sound cynical in my old age, but it takes a lot now in this day and age for me to just sit and go, this really is truly one of the great movies. And this was one of them. And I'm thankful that I got to see it at 47 years old versus maybe seeing it as an 18-year-old, where I was very pretentious about my movies when I was 18. And if it wasn't premiering at Sundance, I wasn't interested. So
I was never a snob, but I agree that I think I was much better able to appreciate this movie's charms as a more of a adult type person, could relate to those situations much more, relate to the older characters, and not just the high school kids.
When you've lived life long enough, you've gained age, wisdom, and experience. Hopefully, you've gained at least one of those things. Age. I hope wisdom is part of that. But just watching it, you're right. I could identify. It's interesting because looking at it, I'm older than the Cloris Leachman character in this movie. It's kind of bizarre to watch the film and, oh, she's the older lady, but wait, you're older than her. So is she the older lady? So it's just very, I'm so glad that, number one, you recommended the movie, and I'm so glad that it lived up to what were, I'll be honest with you, very high expectations, because not only on your recommendations, but just on the fact that this is considered one of the great movies of the 1970s. I was really hopeful. And
so glad. Up to that.
Random question I'm going to throw out there. Your experiences with Peter Bogdanovich beyond this film. I know Paper Moon was his next film, which is also highly acclaimed. I also have not seen that movie. I'm just wondering if there's anything else in his catalog that you've seen that you could give a recommend to.
I would pretty much stop with Paper Moon. Okay. I didn't really dig What's Up, Doc, which was a tribute to the to like the what do you call screwball comedies of the 30s. Not my thing. It still gets a little pastiche for me. Somehow Paper Moon was had an old style feel. It had a stylized old feel, and yet the dialogue was really witty. No, I can't really. I can't really. I think this is his masterpiece. And this and Paper Moon were also excellent. And once again, those were the movies he did with his wife, who he had which the marriage was over when he had an affair with Sybil Shepherd throughout the making of Picture Show, and carried on working with her because she was really his ideal collaborator. creator, and his career freaking tanked after she stopped working with him. He did this total flopperoo at Long Last Love, where he had Burt Reynolds. It was a musical. They all sang their own songs. It was a disaster. It was like Ishtar level disaster. Meanwhile, Polly Platt went on to like script doctoring and all sorts of work. She was hugely involved in terms of endearment, and movies, and other very, very excellent, successful Hollywood movies, whereas he went really into a major slide after she left. So again, she's the unsung hero of this movie. She did everything from set building. She recommended the book to Bogdanovich. She recommended Sybil Shepherd, her own human replacement, as of her marriage. She recommended Sybil Shepherd, and also did Sybil Shepherd's hair and makeup and costumes, even as she was ruining their marriage, because she wanted the movie to succeed, and she wanted Sybil Shepherd to look as wonderful as she possibly could, which she did in every scene. Which is an amazing thing. There's a whole real backstory is really interesting.
I side note to that, Jess was in the podcast studio doing some editing on her show when I was watching the movie today, but she could hear the film playing, and she said, "I'm not a big fan of Sybil Shepherd, and I've never thought she was that pretty." I said, "Come out here real quick." And she comes out and she goes, "Okay, she's gorgeous in this film. I'm sorry, I should never have said that." And she went back into the podcast studio.
That's fine. No, yeah, I mean, at that point, she was, the cinematography was beautiful. Yeah. Everyone looked pretty great in that movie.
I am looking at Bogdanovich's entire filmography here.
Yeah.
Okay, and I can just tell you real quick, I'm familiar with At Long Last Love. When Burt Reynolds passed away a few years ago, I had a film historian who was a big fan of him come on, and we just did sort of a discussion of his entire filmography, and we spent a few minutes talking about the film. I have not seen it, although I have watched some clips on YouTube, and it doesn't. I'll just say this, David, not for me. You know what? The movie's not for me.
We're not going to be discussing this next week. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no. They All Laughed. There's a terrible, tragic backstory behind They All Laughed when Bogdanovich was involved with Dorothy Stratton, who was a Playboy model who, unfortunately
he was kind of a very arrogant, kind of louche type of fellow, which I don't respect so much. But if his work had continued being great, I would have, I can really respect it.
The only other film on this list that I've actually seen a couple of times is 1985's Mask with Cher and Eric Stoltz.
Right, that's right. Yeah,
and
that was pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't probably seen that movie in 20 years, David, but my memories are that I thought it was a pretty good film.
I forgot he did that. And he was good in his acting on Sopranos.
Yeah, he's great on Sopranos. Absolutely. I'm going to watch Texasville, because I don't know how to say it. I got to watch it because I just want to know what happened to the characters.
What happens? Okay, tell me about it. You'll do that. You take that.
I'll take that assignment on. I want to see it.
If we need to talk about it, maybe we shall.
All right, perfect. Well, David, I appreciate you always taking the time to do the show here. I want to remind listeners out there that you wrote a fantastic memoir called The Plus One. I encourage everyone to listen to that first episode. The first time David joined me on the podcast, there's a link in this episode's show notes for you to check that out. We go very in depth about the book, and there's always links in this episode show notes where you can get a copy of the book. I highly recommend it. Jess got a copy a couple days ago. She was delighted. She's just started to dig into it, and she's enjoying it. So, thank you as always for doing the show.
It's really been a pleasure. It always is, and I'm looking forward to the next one. We'll have to figure that out.
We don't know what the next one is yet. So listeners, we'll have a little discussion when we're done recording, but we're not sure what the next one is. But David, I appreciate you as always, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great.
And my name is Dana Buckler, and thank you so much for listening.